Looks like we have folks joining. We'll go ahead and get started here in just a couple minutes.
Mike, you're on mute.
Perfect. Thanks, Abhi. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Folks will keep joining, but that's fine. So thank you all for joining us today for the 7th event. We are having this MediLedger webinar series continue. And I think that we're getting better at these virtual events. Hopefully everyone else is getting used to attending these behind their computer. Abhi, if you could go ahead and go to the next slide. Today, we're going to be talking about an implementation walkthrough of the blockchain-based solution for chargebacks in life sciences. Sorry, one more back. Just a couple admin notes. So everyone should be muted just for the sake of the group, but we will have the opportunity to ask questions throughout. Go ahead and use the Q&A tool in the bottom of the Zoom. And I'll make sure to pause at different times throughout to make sure questions get addressed. Or if it's more appropriate, the questions may be saved till the end, where we will make sure to leave time for Q&A as well. I'm joined today by Abhishek Gutgutia and Suzanne Somerville. Suzanne is our CEO, Abhi is our Chief Product Officer, and they'll be taking over different points of the presentation and both be able to answer questions as we go. I think that's it. Again, the Q&A tools at the bottom and also the chat if you have any questions. These slides will be shared afterwards and published on our website. So a couple questions already came in about that. So with that, I'll hand it off to Suzanne and let you take it over. Maybe onto the next slide, Abhi.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And thanks everyone for joining today. As Mike mentioned, we're going to talk about sort of the next phase of evolution. We've done a lot of webinars talking about both the MediLedger Network, how it's been designed, what the potential is. We're going to do a quick recap today to talk about that vision and overview again, but then I'm going to hand it off to Abhi, who's going to talk about what does an actual implementation journey look like. And I think this will be interesting for those who maybe it still feels very abstract, to hopefully make it very real and tactical. But it's also interesting to think about what it's going to take to participate in a network with your trading partners. So next slide, Abhi. So I want to recap again the vision of what we're building is we believe strongly that technology is available now that can actually allow automation across companies. When you think about it, companies do spend a lot of time and energy fixing things within their own four walls. I remember very clearly my boss frequently would come to me and say, hey, for next year, can you guys do the same activities you did this year, but with 10% less budget? Or in bad years, I want you to do 10% more with 10% less budget. So I know very well the story and the pressure managers have to drive efficiency within their own four walls. But if we look ahead, and Abhi, if you could click, what if we could actually enable that efficiency between companies? And because this area is actually quite untapped, the potential to drive efficiencies in the processes with your trading partners is actually quite enormous, especially for processes like the chargeback process we're going to talk about today, which requires multi-company alignment on data and transactions. And if we look ahead in the future, one more click, we actually believe this is actually going to enable whole new ways of doing business. And we've been reading about digital transformation. I believe strongly that companies that start to adopt these technologies are going to be some of the first to figure out some of those new business models, and it will prove very advantageous. Next slide, Abhi. Oh, sorry, to start, when we think of processes, you guys might have already seen this before. Processes like, is the product authentic? Are raw materials coming from the right supplier? Was my rebate correct? These are all examples of the processes that sit between companies that one company by themselves cannot solve. And today, companies utilize mechanisms like EDI to exchange information from one company to another. But EDI has its limits, right? If we just think about it for a second, it was a technology invented before the internet, is effectively an electronic fax. It is literally the exchange of information from one party to another, not necessarily with any feedback loop to know if the message was received, if it was interpreted correctly. Today's technology all can enable that type of analysis, such that by having a construct we're going to talk about today, it can enable this communication between parties, and I would even characterize it as smart communication to ensure the message is been received, meets your rules, and is processed accordingly. Next slide, Abhi. So why does this matter? When you think about it, and we have lots of examples, there is data that the industry leverages today that everyone updates their own systems independently. Why can't we create a construct that people can access that data? They know that their trading partners are operating from the exact same data, and the data can be updated real time. A great example of this is our partnership with Hibic that is enabling access to their HIN database through the MediLedger Network. Secondly, if you think about it, and we've thought about this since day one, no company in its right mind would participate in a network if there was any concern about private information or business intelligence being leaked to their trading partners or, frankly, more importantly, their competitors. So we've designed this solution privacy first so that these data exchange and rule enforcement can take place, but at the same time, companies have no concerns about leaking any private information. We're really proud of the fact that we've undergone numerous IT security audits from major pharmaceutical companies and wholesalers that have proven this point again and again. As I mentioned earlier, I think there's a tremendous amount of value that's sitting between trading partners. And I also want to be clear, we're enabling direct transactions between partners. There's no longer a need for a third party to collect companies' data and give it back to them. We actually enable direct peer-to-peer communication. And maybe as a note for those not familiar, Chronicled is helping the industry design and develop this software, but Chronicled themselves doesn't sit in between. We don't actually have access to companies' private data. It literally communicates directly from one trading partner to another. And we believe this is the future of data ownership and data management for enterprises going forward. This is a super exciting construct. Maybe the last to note is this also enables business rule enforcement between you and your trading partners. So when you are getting information from a trading partner, you know that it has been checked and validated against the rules that matter to you. So you are not going to be bothered with their issues and mistakes. And maybe the converse is also true. Companies do their best to manage their data, but they also can fall short. So this provides an opportunity for you to catch your issues and mistakes before it leaves your walls, before it goes to your trading partner. So it works both ways. So we think this is really exciting. We think this is the future of business automation and transaction exchange between parties. And that's what our solution has been built upon. Next slide. So the MediLedger Network, and Abhi's going to go into detail about the implementation, but a lot of this relies on the idea of a node and a company running a node. And what does that node mean? That node, if you're a company, would first of all have access to a shared blockchain ledger, shown here in the middle with the red boxes. Any data or transactions that a company chooses to post to the blockchain ledger are checked for validity against the rules. If everything's valid, that transaction is registered on the blockchain ledger and it's shared immediately with all other parties in the network. So by design, we're very careful that that information that's posed there is either public information already, or is obfuscated through cryptography. So it has no meaning to folks who shouldn't be getting any information about that transaction. But we also store companies' identities on that blockchain ledger. And by having this permissioned network, we identify every company that joins. It enables the blue boxes. The blue boxes represent companies' private data. It sits private with them, but is part of the overall MediLedger node. And that private data now and their identity enables that blue line, which is secure peer-to-peer private messaging between a company and any other trading partner that sits in the network. No more point-to-point integrations, no more additional validation. We're going to talk through a little bit of the testing as your new trading partners join, but the software is designed that you are now connected directly with everyone else in the network, and all the communication that takes place on that blue line is private to you and the other party. No one in the network can know that that communication is taking place, not even chronicled, like I mentioned before. This is truly secure and private. And it's this combination of data exchange privately between parties and rule enforcement that can be connected via a shared blockchain ledger that is key to the design of our solutions to ensure full privacy, but the ability to enable automation and trust between companies. Next slide. But I do want to highlight that the solution and the platform we've built is much more than just blockchain. We've talked about some of the elements, the confidential messaging interface. There is the blockchain synchronizer. There is a data sharing engine. There's a protocol primitive service for the components of the business process that are being run by the application. There's a whole set of platform components powered by literally the latest state of technology to ensure that this really can catapult companies and industry into the 21st century. But we've designed this platform to take on application components. Some of the companies on the call might be familiar with our product verification solution to help with compliance with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. Our chargeback solution is the second application. But we've designed this so that companies who choose to participate in specific applications can add those components to the platform and be able to execute those solutions to automate those business processes. So we've said it before, but it's almost, if you could imagine, we think this node has been designed for the enterprise in a way that your smartphone was designed for you. The ability to communicate with anyone else in the network and giving you the choice to participate in different applications that are beneficial to you as a company. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Abhi, who's now going to talk more about the specifics of implementing a MediLedger node.
Thank you, Suzanne, and hello, everyone. Let's walk through the implementation journey of a MediLedger node. But before we do that, let's understand in some more detail what does a MediLedger node even mean? What is the anatomy of a MediLedger node? The MediLedger node, at a very high level, when it's delivered to you, it's a collection of microservices. And these microservices are approximately divided into 3 buckets, starting from the left here. The first bucket is a set of microservices that are meant to help you integrate with your existing systems and services very easily. The second set of microservices are what are called business components. So this is where all the business logic resides, and the specific business data resides as well. And it's very specific to an application. So there might be components that are specific to the chargebacks application. There might be components that are specific to the product verification application. So really the business components are designed to cater to a very specific use case. And then finally, on the right-hand side, there are network components. And these network components are application agnostic and use case agnostic. These, once deployed, can be used to communicate with your trading partners and communicate with the blockchain in a completely application agnostic and use case agnostic manner. And that's a very key point to emphasize, and because that's where some of the platform aspects of the network comes into play. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the later slides as well. But it's important to emphasize that the network components are application agnostic. And the network components are really two. At a very high level, there are two main components. The first is the confidential messaging component, and the second is the blockchain component. The confidential messaging component helps this node communicate with all other nodes in the network in a secure peer-to-peer fashion. And the blockchain component helps this node interact with the blockchain directly. And interaction with the blockchain happens in two forms. One is there is public data stored in the blockchain. So the HIN numbers are an example, or the DA numbers are an example, where those numbers will be stored in the blockchain and will be considered quote unquote public data, in that all information contained in the blockchain is visible to everyone who joins the network. The second way in which the blockchain is used here is to store proofs of transactions that you conduct with your trading partners. A contextual example here is contract updates. So when a drug manufacturer shares a new contract with the wholesalers and the GPOs, a proof of that contract, and specifically a zero knowledge proof, is punched to the blockchain using the node here, so that there is absolute proof and guarantee behind that contract update. And it's a stamp from the manufacturer saying that I stand by this latest contract update, and I'll honor any claims that are submitted against this version of the contract. So that really is the second benefit of the blockchain here. So as you can sort of see here in this diagram, again, to summarize, a collection of microservices, integration, business, as well as network components, they all interact with each other in a very coherent, elegant fashion using RabbitMQ, and our design overall is an event-driven design. That's the architecture we are using that allows these microservices to interact with each other in very independent, elegant ways. So this is what is delivered to you. So again, what you're seeing here in this picture is the anatomy of a single node. So when any of you choose to deploy this node in your infrastructure, this is what you're getting. And of course, there's configurations involved, but once you deploy this, you'll get connected to the network, and you'll be able to start interacting with the rest of the network.
Quick question that I think might be relevant here, but also in the overall network slide that Suzanne showed. Does the blue node have its own data storage for private data?
It does. The node has its own private storage as well. And the only quote unquote public storage is what resides in the blockchain. So in this diagram here, in this picture here, all the business components that you see, most of them have their own storage that is local to the company that has deployed the node, and it's private to the company. And then that company can choose to share that information through the blue box here, through the confidential messaging network, can very precisely choose what information to share with who and under what circumstances. So every company has complete control over their private data.
Sounds good. I think we're good.
So before we go into the deployment, let's talk about a few prerequisites because we are talking about the implementation journey here. So the first, of course, is that if you choose to deploy the node, you must first provision the infrastructure. And we have designed the system such that it supports a variety of options. We have designed it first and foremost such that you host the node yourself, and you get connected to your trading partners directly, and such that you don't have to depend on a Chronicle or any third-party service provider at all. So as Suzanne was saying, Our system is designed with privacy in mind, and that's at the heart of everything that we've done so far and will do in the future. And so what this means is, from an infrastructure perspective, we expect you to deploy the node in the infrastructure of your choosing, and you can choose to deploy the node in the cloud, in the Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure or Amazon AWS. Really, the choice is up to you, and or you can also choose to deploy it on premises. But uh, all this infrastructure must have a Kubernetes layer, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, because Kubernetes is one of the pillars of our architecture here. You must have Kubernetes layer enabled in whatever infrastructure you choose, to make it very easy and seamless to deploy the node and maintain the node and configure the node. So the first and foremost, your option, you can host the node yourself in the infrastructure of your choosing. But for some reason, if that's not possible, Chronicle can also host the node for you and offer it as a regular cloud service. Or you can also ask a service provider of your choosing, which could be any other third-party company, to host a node for you as well. So you have plenty of options depending on your constraints, your IT constraints, budget constraints, or your internal data privacy guidelines, to choose any of these options to get the node going. So once you have this infrastructure provision, if we go to the next slide, the node software itself, as I was saying, is a collection of microservices. And this collection of microservices is delivered to you in a containerized form. So they're delivered to you as containers, as images that you can then take and deploy using Kubernetes. And Kubernetes, I'm sure most of you know, is a container orchestration platform that was open sourced by Google a few years ago, and it's an extremely powerful platform that makes it very easy to deploy these nodes quickly, configure them, and then also manage them on an ongoing basis. So as upgrades take place for the different microservices, those individual microservices can be upgraded very, very seamlessly. Some of the other advantages besides rapid deployments are, for example, that the infrastructure and the deployments and the microservices become self-healing, in that if any of the services go down, then Kubernetes orchestrates bringing up a replica service or rebooting the service that went down. So Kubernetes takes care of a lot of that container management there, to make sure that the infrastructure, the node itself is running all the time, and there's a very high uptime guarantee. Kubernetes also makes it super easy to manage your secrets and configurations that you might perform in the application. Allows you to do automatic load balancing between the different services and between the redundant microservices as well. And then finally, automatic rollbacks and rollouts. So as you upgrade the node and as you're rolling out changes, Kubernetes makes it very easy to do that, to roll changes out. And if there's any issues in those upgrades, makes it very easy for you to roll back the changes as well and go back to an earlier version. And what we're highlighting here are just some of the advantages of Kubernetes. There's a number of other advantages as well. And Kubernetes is one of our core DevOps tools that we're using to great effect, right? We've already seen the benefits of this in a tremendous way over the past many months now. So you have now, in the infrastructure provision, you have the images, the containers with you, the software with you, and you now have to deploy it. Once you deploy the software using Kubernetes and using the containers, you have to, of course, configure do a number of configurations. The first of which is configuring the integrations. And we're talking about a number of different types of integrations here. Primarily integrations between the MediLedger node and your legacy system, which could be SAP. In the context of chargebacks, it could be Model N or any other system out there that you're using for contracting and chargebacks purposes, or in a different use case context, might be other applications as well. But you need to configure those integrations. You need to configure other systems as well. For example, single sign-on, if you have that, logging systems, monitoring systems that you might have. So you integrate all that with the MediLedger node. Then you get into the application itself and you start doing trading partner configurations. And here, trading partner configurations to begin with is very simple, in that you choose which trading partners in the network you want to do business with. The network might contain a number of trading partners, a number of manufacturers, wholesalers, GPOs, but not all of them might be your trading partners. And so you're going to have to tell the system which trading partners you do business with, so that the communication channels can be established, and the system knows that the system should not inadvertently send messages to trading partners that are not your trading partners, right? That you did never meant to send messages to. And then finally, along those lines, there's data sharing rules as well. So even for the trading partners that you do business with, you have full control over what data you share with them, which data elements. So you have control at an data element level, at a field level, and you can also choose under what conditions you share the data. So the system, once you've configured all these rules, the system becomes extremely aware and precisely aware of which trading partners you do business with, and which trading partners should receive which data under what conditions. And this allows you to start transacting with them and not worry about data privacy. So once you've done this, once you've set up the node, the next step, of course, is to get connected to the network and then start testing. Before we talk about testing, I just want to highlight the different types of networks that any of you who are joining the network will have to work with in the journey. The first is the sandbox network. When you get started, there are a number of issues that you might have to work through in terms of your infrastructure, in terms of your integrations, etc. So we highly recommend that anyone first start with a sandbox network. And as the name suggests, this is a network in which you have a node, and either you mimic and you pretend to be a trading partner as well, or you can work with Chronicled to have Chronicled act as one or more of your trading partners. And then once that sandbox network is set up, Chronicled and you can exchange messages and perform all the integrations, etc., to make sure that the infrastructure issues and integration issues are all ironed out and there's no issues over there before you join the test network. The test network is a live network in which all your trading partners are already present. And once you join the test network, you can then start testing communications with your trading partners. You can also start testing your data sharing rules, make sure your data sharing rules are all working as expected, and iron them out as well. And then once you've tested that, all the communication and the integration and the application functionality, of course, then you move into the production network, which is where you start conducting live transactions and start communicating with your trading partners in a very, very live manner. So these are the three types of network. We'll go into testing next, but before that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them right now.
Yeah, thanks, Abhi. There was one question around the how transaction size and time is managed in addition to node governance. Basically, just as the network gets larger and the blockchain gets larger, what happens to the performance, and will it drag down the network?
Right, that's an excellent question. As far as the transaction time is concerned, and the transaction size, the block size, etc., all that is encoded right in the beginning. As when we bootstrap the network, everything is encoded into the network, and that is not. It is possible to change those later on as well, but it is highly advisable not to do that, because any changes to the transaction size or the transaction time or the block time is going to require a pretty wide reset of the entire network, and that can be extremely costly. But that said, we have, of course, taken all that into account, and we have designed the network and the blockchain such that there is very little dependency on the data that is going to be stored in the blockchain and the transactions that are going to be stored in the blockchain. So to dial back a little bit, we said right in the beginning that blockchain is used in two ways. One is to store public data, and the second is to store proofs of transactions. So as far as proofs of transactions are concerned, those are extremely small in nature. And that's why we are using zero knowledge proofs, because zero knowledge proofs can help you compact transaction proofs into very small data packets that really don't make a whole lot of, that don't impact the storage at all. It is the public data that is stored in the blockchain that we really need to consider. But for chargebacks purposes, we have provisioned it such that the storage that the HIN numbers and the other public data will take up is a fraction of the storage that is available in the blockchain. That said, though, in the future, if the storage requirements do increase, the storage can be upgraded to account for those additional storage requirements. But we do not expect for the next about 10 years for us to run out of storage and for there to be any issues with the blockchain. And Mike, there was a second part of the question, if you don't mind repeating it.
Yeah. Well, it's just around, is there potential or risk of the network getting large enough where performance of a node is dragged down and transaction delays, things like that, I think.
Right. So besides the storage, which relates to the blockchain, the second aspect that we have considered in a very deep way is the peer-to-peer messages that take place between the nodes, and making sure that as the number of nodes in the network grow, that the peer-to-peer messages, the throughput can still be maintained, and there's no drag on that throughput itself. Because when you really look at the network communications, it's the peer-to-peer messaging where a lot of messages are flying back and forth between the trading partners. So we have already accounted for that. We have designed it to handle a very large number of nodes in the network, and we do not expect there to be a performance issue for the next, say, 5 years. Of course, we are constantly working on increasing that throughput, and as we are increasing it, the technologies that we have chosen do make it easy for us to roll out those upgrades and keep increasing the throughput as we go forward in the future. And it's very parallel to how the internet evolved, in that if you go back 20 years ago, the bandwidth available was very low, and all the infrastructure could support only a limited amount of bandwidth. But there's been constant improvements made to where today you can have 1 gigabyte per second transfer speeds. So in a very similar manner, we are going to have to continue to work on peer-to-peer messaging throughput as well, so that it can continue to handle the needs for the next, not only for the next few years, but also for the next 10, 20, 30 years, for many decades to come, because we envision this to be the network for the entire industry, and not just for the chargeback solution, but for other solutions as well.
Great, thanks, Abhi. There's one other, well, I guess there was a couple other, I'll maybe bring one up, and then we save some for a little bit later, but just around the role of partners, building and customizing the solution, probably also touch on the hosted option if the companies want to work with a solution provider, but how they're involved in the network and building the solution.
Sure, I can speak to a few things, and Suzanne, please chime in as well. So the role of the partners can be many in nature. The first, of course, is the hosting, where a partner can choose to provide this node as a service to one or more companies that do not want to deploy the node locally and maintain the node locally. So that function can be delegated to a third-party service provider. So that's one of the aspects in which a partner can jump in and help with this network. So there's a node deployment, node management. The other big piece is around services, where when we get going with the node, there are a number of configurations that need to be made in the node. There are a lot of local business rules that need to be encoded in the node, and we've designed the system to allow for that. We've designed the system, for example, to allow manufacturer A and manufacturer B to encode some of their class of trade determination rules into the node, because that's one of the functionalities in the node. The node helps you automatically determine class of trade, as an example. So a lot of those local business rules need to be discovered, documented, and then implemented in the node, and a partner, a service provider or a partner can play a very big role there in providing that service to the manufacturer, from discovery all the way to actually implementing those business rules in the node. So those are a couple of ways in which a service provider can participate in the network and assist the various companies and the trading partners. But Suzanne, I don't know if you had anything else to add besides that.
Yeah, maybe just to give context as well, this solution has been designed in collaboration with manufacturers, wholesalers, and contract entities to define the process that takes place between companies, between the trading partners. It's designed to frankly match how it's been done today and do better, right? How could we envision if everyone was operating from the same data that this process could work better? So I think when I look at the question of the role of the partners, all of them have contributed to ensure we can build a solution that I would say is not advantageous for any party, but fixes the communication breakdown between companies. And it does enable, and I think Abhi referred to this, the ability that trading partners who have rules specifically between each other can customize those rules to ensure that the rules that matter to them with their trading partners are enforced. So hope that helps.
That's good. There's a couple other questions I'll filter in and sprinkle in as we go. But yeah, I think we can move forward. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about testing. As I was saying earlier, when a node is deployed, the first thing to do is to test the integrations. That's where we've seen a lot of time being spent, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to any of you, but because the systems vary with every trading partner and the nature of the systems and the system setup that you've done locally also varies, the integration between your existing systems and the node is what takes up most of the time in this journey. And through the integration assets that we've built, and these integration assets being API connectors. So we have a whole suite of APIs and webhooks available to make it easy for you to integrate with your existing systems if they do support APIs. So there's the API connectors. There's also very specific system connectors with, again, either with SAP or Model N or any other legacy system that you might have. Those connectors make it very easy for you to integrate and test the integrations very quickly. So once this is done, once the integration testing is done, where you essentially make sure that information is flowing from your current systems to the MediLedger node, you then go into network testing. That's the other big thing to get through, where you have to make sure that you have opened up the necessary ports in your firewalls and that messages are being able to go out from your node to your trading partner nodes, and that you are being able to receive messages from other trading partners into your nodes. That is the other key piece of configuration and setup that needs to be done, and that needs to be tested. Opening up ports can take up time because of firewall policies, etc. And one of the key things to note about these ports is that once these connections are established between you and your trading partners, which is a major feature of the platform and the network, once these connections are established, because of the technology that we have used, the underlying technology, these connections with your trading partners are permanent in nature. So these are long-living connections through which you can now send any messages or receive any messages, not just chargeback messages, and that allows you to start building additional applications with all the existing setup that you have and the existing network that you have. And this is very different from how things happen today, where on a use case by use case basis, you have to establish either point-to-point connections with your trading partners, or you have to go through a service provider. You have to deal with VPNs, you have to deal with additional firewall issues and opening up ports, etc. And so every single time for every single new application, it becomes very cumbersome to set it up and to start communicating with your trading partners. But here, once the connection has been established, it's permanent in nature, it's secure in nature, and you can use it for any communication whatsoever, not just chargebacks. Now, we have, of course, made sure that there are enough controls in place again and enough policies in place that you can use to make sure that you don't send any messages that you don't mean to send, and you don't receive anything that you don't want to receive. So there's a lot of control that has been built on top of this to give you full control from an IT perspective.
Abhi, sorry, two things. I think your microphone might be causing some static when it rubs against your shirt. There's some background noise that I think is the cause.
All right.
No worries. And then the other, there was a question that might be relevant to include throughout here, just around timeline overall of the implementation and maybe some of the phases that we're talking about.
The timeline, the whole timeline, of course, depends. But we have seen that the primary time window is taken up by internal provisioning of the infrastructure and provisioning of the ports and making accommodations in the firewall policies. So a lot of the internal configurations and policy changes and policy accommodations are what end up taking the most time. Assuming all that is done, assuming that infrastructure is provisioned, the ports are ready to be opened, the actual deployment of the node, the configuration of the node, takes it's a few weeks. The testing of the nodes is a few more weeks, where you'll spend maybe a couple of weeks doing internal testing all by yourself in the sandbox, and then you'll spend 2 to 3 weeks testing with your trading partners. So again, as you know, I hate to use the word and the phrase, but it really depends. It depends on your business rule, local business rules as well. How complex are they, and how long will it take to document those business rules and implement those business rules? But let me put it this way, in a very optimistic scenario, from start to finish, from the day we decide to engage and you decide to deploy the node in the network to the node actually going live in the production network, it would be about, very optimistically, about 2 to 3 months. Could be lower, but I think that's about the realistic case. But it can take more than that as well if the business rules are complex, if it takes time to provision the infrastructure, and so forth.
And Abhi, there was a question sort of related. Once you've done the first implementation, bringing additional trading partners on who are also in the network should go a lot faster because you've tested and implemented all the software. The software is the same with every single trading partner. You just might need to test the individual rules with that trading partner, but it should go much quicker.
Correct. Adding additional trading partners, we're talking about a matter of days. Provisioning the new trading partner, whitelisting them, making sure you're being able to send messages to them and receive messages from them. We're talking about maybe a maximum a week to set up a new trading partner.
There was a couple other questions around security, basically around like what needs to change in the firewall policy, and how that, like what exactly gets exposed to third parties, basically around that sort of policy change.
So I wouldn't be able to speak to the exact policy change, but maybe on just the security piece itself, there are multiple layers of security here that make sure that you're not receiving any data that can compromise your existing systems. So first of all, by its very nature, by the fact that this is a permission network and all the trading partners that are onboarded go through a due diligence process before they're onboarded into the network, make sure that there aren't any unwanted parties in the network to begin with. So these are all known parties in the network. Everyone has been vetted. After that, you have full control over, from a whitelisting, blacklisting perspective, who you want to receive messages from. So if you don't want to receive messages from someone, you can put them on a blacklist and you will not receive messages from them, period. But let's say you do start receiving messages, then these messages go through additional validation layers. Once the data has been received, the node, and there's one component here which is not shown, but that component is responsible for making sure that the messages that have been received are validated against expected schema so that there's no unwanted payloads and unwanted formats that are being received by the node that can potentially compromise.
Abhi, did we lose you? I think we may have.
Abhi's frozen for a second. No worries. Let's see if there's other questions we could ask while.
Yeah, so, Suzanne, there's one I think we can address around the back at the blockchain technology being used. There's questions around, what blockchain makes the most sense for healthcare and what is the background blockchain technology we're using.
Yeah, so we've built our solution on top of Substrate. It's the technology that's come out of Parity. Parity is founded by one of the founders of Ethereum. So our initial work was based on an Ethereum client, but we've upgraded to Substrate because Substrate, which is the backbone of the Polkadot network, we believe has the future potential to enable interfacing and connecting to other blockchain networks, and is potentially a path to public blockchain. We're not ruling that out, but we understand that today there are not public blockchains capable of handling what we believe are the privacy concerns and transaction volumes for the life science and healthcare industry. So that's the choices we've made to date, and we're continuing to evaluate the right technology choices going forward.
Great. And then, Abhi, do we have you back?
I think so. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I hope I answered the security question.
Yeah, I think you addressed most of it. You were cut off towards the end there. Obviously, everyone's firewall policies are different, but I think there was one sort of follow-up to that, which you can maybe use to finish off your answer, which was around once a port is open for a trading partner in the firewall, can we develop an enterprise app that will directly communicate with trading partners to circumvent the blockchain ledger?
Yes. So as I was saying earlier, once you've established this connection, the confidential messaging component and the blockchain component are microservices in themselves. So you can.
Oh no.
Did we lose Avi again?
Well, we'll try to finish off his point. Basically, you can basically communicate with trading partners directly. The blockchain ledger is used for a specific aspect around contract communication, but as more solutions are developed on the platform and in the network, blockchain will only be used in specific places, and there are other applications can be built to directly interact with trading partners. And again, opening the firewall and all of the steps taken to implement the MediLedger node basically sets it up as a platform for all of these new solutions to interact with trading partners for other reasons. Let's see, and then there was another question around the cost structure and model for a MediLedger node. Suzanne, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so Chronicled is building the software and is licensing the software to companies. Companies, as we sort of talked about at the beginning of the presentation, implement the infrastructure or make the choices about that, and the costs associated with that are borne by the company. Then they just need to license the software from Chronicled, and then we deploy and we manage on behalf. So it is a SaaS-like model.
Excellent. Yeah, and of course we're happy to talk through details of that and offline. And yeah, it looks like Abhi's joining again. Suzanne, do you want to maybe pull up the deck just to finish off here? We've only got about 10 minutes left. If Abhi can speak to it from your side.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm having very clearly internet issues. The Wi-Fi is down. So I'm joined by phone now, so we should not have any audio issues, but I won't be able to share the deck. So Suzanne,
yeah, let me share the deck. Hold on.
There's another question here while she's pulling it up. So since you mentioned public blockchain as a possible future and OAuth, is that, well, how does that relate to HIPAA compliance, public blockchain, I guess, versus private blockchain, and if you're sharing healthcare data, where does public fit in? Yeah.
Our solutions to date have focused on prescription medicine and the transaction and processes associated with it. So I could almost say have stayed away from private data that triggers HIPAA compliance. But I think the capability to become HIPAA compliant, honestly, with the amount of confidentiality that we built into our solution, would be straightforward. But patient data explodes a whole new set of questions about identities and patient identity. So as we tackle those use cases that require patient information, we'll use the same thoughtfulness in our design to ensure that we can design solutions that accommodate that. So I think this is where we were at. I don't know, Abhi, if we want to quickly go through the rest of the slides and continue to take questions along the way.
Yeah, that sounds good, Suzanne. So in this slide, we were talking about testing, and this was one of the final slides talking about, of course, the application testing. Once we have tested the integrations and then the communication, then the final step is to test the application itself. There is a lot of application functionality that has been built into the node specific to the chargeback solution, going back to the business components that we were talking about. So we would have users test those features, make sure all that is acceptable, your typical user acceptance testing. And then once we've done that, if we go to the next slide, the testing is finished, and you can now join the production network and start transacting with your trading partners in the production network. And then the next slide, once you've done that, going back to the high level picture, zooming out, you would have now become part of this MediLedger network, and you can now start interacting with your trading partners directly through confidential messages, as well as start sending transactions to the blockchain. And again, these transactions and this communication need not be limited to chargebacks alone. It can be any other, it can be related to another use case. And to the question I was trying to answer earlier, yes, for sure, additional enterprise applications can be built that are specific to a limited set of trading partners that you do business with, or can be, if the scope is industry-wide, then Chronicle can work with you to make it an industry-wide protocol and an application as well. So then finally, the last slide, if we go to the last slide, just, as far as the solution itself is concerned, because we've talked about the network, we've talked about deploying the node in order to become a part of the network. Just as a reminder, the chargeback solution itself starts delivering a number of immediate benefits to anyone who joins the network in a chargebacks context. The first is that we are dealing with integrated industry data. As I've said many times now, the industry identifiers like the HIN, DA, 340B, all those will be communicated through the blockchain and will be available to anyone who joins the network immediately. And not only is it available immediately, as that information is updated, everyone who is a part of the network becomes aware of those changes at the same time. So there's a high degree of alignment across all the trading partners when it comes to all the information that is pertinent to administering the contracting and chargeback process. The second key feature of the solution is that there's validated GPO rosters. So when the GPOs are sending the rosters to you, the rosters are being pushed by the GPOs to all the trading partners, and those are all validated at source for accuracy and completeness before they ever come to you, and that reduces the redundant effort on many of yours internal processes and procedures to make sure you're not duplicating the effort when it comes to validating the roster. The third is automated customer evaluation. This is a feature available to the manufacturers to automatically make certain determinations about the GPO customer when it arrives at their doorstep. The fourth is real-time contract updates. As contracts are updated in the manufacturer premises, those updates are shared with the trading partners, even the GPOs, near real time. That helps, again, everyone stay aligned on all the information at every moment in time. And then finally, all this results in highly accurate chargebacks, which can be adjudicated real time and can be settled real time as well, if that is what the trading partners desire. So that capability is available as well. One of the key things to note in all of this is that all the communication, the peer-to-peer communication that we've been talking about, does replace EDI messages completely. So in the context of chargebacks, it replaces 845, 844, and 849. And in the future, it can start to replace other EDI messages as well, like the 867, which is the sales trace data, and other EDI messages as well that are used in the industry today to communicate about transactions and conduct transactions themselves. So our approach here is to build the network but build the network with the help of a very deep solution that starts bringing immediate value to a number of you. And then once through the solution, the network is established, help you develop additional applications that can bring additional value beyond chargebacks.
Awesome. Thanks, Avi. Thanks, everyone. Mike, I'd love to take any final questions. And maybe, I know we have 5 minutes left. Did want to also note that our next webinar will be coming up in November. Thanks for all of you who've participated in the series so far. But we're excited that we're going to be joined by Accenture, who's going to talk about the ROI benefits of the solution, of which there's a lot of them. So hope you guys can join us next month for that webinar. But Mike, any final questions in our last few minutes here?
Yeah, on the integration side, are there any Web3 APIs available for application integration?
Web3 APIs, that's interesting. I presume that we are talking about APIs that interact directly with the blockchain. So as of now, no, there aren't any Web3 APIs available that directly interact with the blockchain, and we have done that by design. We have worked very hard to abstract away all the complexities of the blockchain and give you higher level components that are somewhat more traditional and expose to Web 2.0 APIs, if you will, that everyone is familiar with and can use to start building applications. We may introduce Web3 APIs in the future, but as of today, we do not have any Web3 APIs available.
Thanks, Avi. Another question is around next steps. More specifically, what are the next steps, an in-house presentation to the decision makers?
Yeah, sign us up. We'd be happy to share detailed information. Each company does have their own architecture and own decisions. So far, we've worked with major wholesalers and manufacturers to implement our solutions. So haven't hit anything yet that's not navigatable. And we're super excited because we, as mentioned, we do think this is the future of how companies can communicate and honestly automate processes that sit between them. So we'd be happy to talk to anyone.
Great. And then another question was around other blockchain-based networks in the healthcare industry. Any that are on our radar around future integrations, interoperability, or any other sort of partnership that we see?
So our solutions today, we've talked today a lot about the chargeback solution, but our product verification solution is already in production. We've used industry specifications to ensure that we're interoperable. The other solution providers in the space don't happen to be blockchain based, but we have interoperability with them. So as other solutions and networks emerge, we're more than happy to define the appropriate interoperability to help companies best leverage those choices. So yeah, if other people have specific solutions they'd love us to integrate with, we'd be happy to know. And we're definitely in discussion with other companies as people have ideas of how we can build solutions that provide you, the industry, with the interoperability you need to be able to do business.
Excellent. And that, I think we're about out of time. So hopefully that addressed all the questions. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hopefully this was informative. I posted a link in the group chat where you can find our webinars page. All previous recordings and presentations are there. And this one will be posted there by the end of the day. So thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.